Come on now, guys. We've done 3 of these already. You should know the score by now. I love these little guys. Every year. So Halloween is upon us once again, dear viewer, and as is custom round these parts, that means a month dedicated to a fine selection of Halloween horrors, both for the family and for grown-ups only. I like the idea of including more kid-friendly horror films during this month when I'm not doing themes, as I think it gives parents a bit of a wider variety in what films they can show their kids, assuming they haven't already introduced their 4 to 6-year-olds to the likes of Freddy Krueger. And today's film is most definitely one for the family, though I do rather feel that someone will end up being sued by the end of this review. I'm not sure who though, and that's the worrying part. 1986's The Worst Witch is a family movie based on a series of books written by Jill Murphy between 1974 and 2018. This movie only focuses on the events of the first book really, but within minutes of hitting play on it, I knew I'd found something that felt pretty familiar. The film follows Mildred Hubble, the titular Worst Witch, a somewhat clumsy and slightly shy girl who literally can't do right for doing wrong. Set her a task and dollars to donuts, you're gonna have a problem on your hands. The easiest example being that during her potions exam, she's asked to make a laughter potion. But because she waited too long to harvest one of the ingredients, she ends up making an invisibility potion, failing her exam. Mildred attends Miss Cackle's International School for Witches, basically a private girls' school where young witches can learn and hone their craft to become, well, witches. And this film takes place over Mildred's first term at school. Mildred has a best friend in the form of Maud, who backs her up where and when she can, but she's arguably only slightly more competent than Mildred. The pair have a deep-running hatred come rivalry with the snobby posh girl Ethel Hallow. The film could best be split into 2 halves really. The first half is Mildred getting settled into school life and the ups and downs that come with it, including the beginnings of her rivalry with Ethel and the fractious relationship with one of her teachers, Miss Hardbroom. She does however quickly warm to the head teacher, Miss Cackle, who seemingly almost always seems to have Mildred's corner in terms of trying to get the best out of her. She also, in this opening half, gets her first cat. It's supposed to be a black cat, but they ran out. And she also gets her first few broomstick lessons with Miss Spellbinder, with mixed results. It's the second half really where all the action lies, as news reaches the school that the Grand Wizard has graciously accepted an invitation to appear as a guest of honour at the school's Halloween celebrations. And I don't know whether it's a shortage of wizards or whether I'm missing something here, but this news causes the school to go insane. Literally, every girl who so much as looks at a portrait of the Grand Wizard instantly falls utterly and totally in love and devotion to the man. Teachers included. It's crazy. I mean, Tim Curry is positively flash hot, don't get me wrong, but geez, it's like someone spiked the entire school with love potion or something. Even a photograph can send a class of up to 60 students into a frenzied kissing of said photo and squeals of utter delight. It's really odd. Anyway, the school begins preparations for the Grand Wizard's arrival, but just outside of the school grounds near the mountains, Mistress Agatha is waiting. Agatha is an evil witch, the sister of Miss Cackle, and since the school was formed, Agatha's always thought that her sister stole the school off her. When news hits of the Grand Wizard's imminent arrival, Agatha and her army of rejected evil witches begin to formalise plans to storm the school while everyone's out celebrating, with the aim of recapturing the building and turning all of the staff and students into toads in the process. As preparations continue to build for the arrival of the Grand Wizard, a competition is held for 10 students to win the chance of riding their brooms in formation as a way of welcoming him. Mildred ranks 11th, but due to an unfortunate accident, one of the 10 winning students is forced to drop out, bumping Mildred up to 10th place. Ethel, who made the cut because she's a grade A student, because of course she is, decided that this is deeply unacceptable and offers to help Mildred by giving her a better broomstick, which she then curses so as to sabotage the formation performance on the day. Because she's evil. With Mistress Agatha's plans to seize the school slowly but surely coming to fruition, and the day of the Grand Wizard's arrival rapidly approaching, will Mildred be able to keep her cool and avoid messing things up on the big day? Or will she get the whole school in trouble? And worse still, will Agatha succeed in her plans, or will she be stopped in time to prevent a toady mess from destroying the school altogether? To get it out of the way right away, the comparisons to the Harry Potter franchise are frankly unavoidable. And the fact that this series of books predates Potter for the best part of 23 years, and that this film adaptation does so by nearly 11 years, is frankly ludicrous. For all intents and purposes, this TV movie is pretty much Harry Potter if the main protagonist was Neville Longbottom. Harry Potter has so many elements that are clearly stolen from this series that I can't quite believe that people think Potter was some kind of revolutionary new way of telling kids' stories. You have the Mildred Neville comparison right out of the gate, but you also have the easygoing and charming headmistress with a mentor aspect, Miss Cackle, who's basically the groundwork for Albus Dumbledore. You have Ethel, Draco Malfoy but feminine. You have the overly cruel and somewhat moody potions teacher Miss Hardbroom, who's clearly the inspiration for Severus Snape. And in the books, Mildred has two friends, in the film it's condensed down to one, who fill in for the Ron and Hermione roles. Even the schools are extremely similar in terms of design and aesthetic. While Voldemort is a much more edgier bad guy than Mistress Agatha, it's clear from my perspective that even this one TV movie alone shows how shameless J.K. Rowling was in just lifting aspects of this series wholesale and transferring them into her books. In my opinion, I hasten to add, I don't need a lawsuit on my hands at this point. Though I'm definitely not the first person to pick up on this, and even the author of The Worst Witch has said that a thanks would have been nice, given just how similar characters and locations are between the two series. So yeah, if your kids like Harry Potter and want more, throw this at them. It's literally the same thing, but it has Tim Curry in it. And this one came first. And there's more of it. The script's good and solid here. The biggest issue I have is that there isn't really a distinctive second act. I mean, if you break it down as Act 1 being Mildred getting to grips with her new school, Act 2 being the announcement of the Grand Wizard's imminent arrival, and Act 3 being the Grand Wizard's arrival and Agatha's plans kicking off, then I guess that does kind of work. But there's no clear gear change between Acts 1 and 3. Nothing ramps up. There's no definition that we've left one act to go into another. That's not really a problem if you're not looking for it, but the consequence is that this really feels like two 35-minute TV episodes that have just been glued together in the middle. It also kind of struggles as to what tone it exactly wants to set. On the one hand, I'd say half this movie looks and feels like a Harry Potter film had it been made in the 80s. It's got that fantasy element that I personally quite like. The other half, however, is bombastic camp, and my god, it's beautiful. Agatha is hot pink, has a Texas accent and chews through any scene she's put in front of, and Curry's scenes have a theatrical grandness that literally acts as a temporary showstopper. And the musical numbers, my god, the musical numbers! The whole film swings like a pendulum between these two styles, and while that may sour some people's enjoyment of this, I personally loved it for it, as most of the tonal changes were generally quite unexpected. The source material for this adaptation is good and solid. They seem to have largely drawn from that first book with relative accuracy, and the pacing, while maybe a little slow around the middle for 10 minutes or so, is otherwise nice and breezy for the most part. The dialogue is smooth flowing, and although the ending is a bit undercut, it kind of feels like they were really vying to make this a series of films rather than just the one it ultimately became. I didn't leave this one feeling like I'd been shortchanged, which, I mean, given some of the stuff I've reviewed in my time, I'll take that. The script itself being an adaptation, it requires an adapter, and the scriptwriter for this movie was Mary Pleshett Willis. She has only 7 writing credits to her name, her last was in 1990, but highlights include an involvement in an ABC after-school special, and she wrote a couple of episodes of The Babysitters Club. I personally think she's done a really good job here in helping to shape and create the Worst Witch world. Though as it's been some time since I've read the first Worst Witch novel, I can't with 100% certainty say if she nails the adaptation faithfully. All I can say is, I enjoyed what I saw in regards to the story. This was originally produced by Central Television, the Midlands-based chapter of what is now known as ITV in the UK. The reason I mention it is, with this being a TV movie, I didn't exactly have the highest hopes in terms of direction for this. But you know what? I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised, quite honestly. In places, this does look very cinematic, which might not sound like much by modern standards, but for 1986, it's pretty next level. While it's not perfect and there are still a couple of cracks here and there that clearly mark it as a TV production, for about 70 to 80% of this, had it been cropped into Academy ratio, I'd have genuinely believed it was a cinema production. But that's because the director for this TV movie was Robert Young, who'd worked in the film industry on multiple occasions up to this point and clearly had a keen eye on exactly what he wanted to get out of this production. Young is probably best known as being the director of the Hammer horror film Vampire Circus, and that was his first ever feature directing credit. And on top of the odd dabbling within cinema over the years, he also had a highly extensive history of working in TV, with credits including Minder, the Hammer House of Horror series, and multiple entries into the Young Indiana Jones franchise. Here, he seems to fit into this type of horror fantasy with a sense of comfort and familiarity. He seems to understand exactly what audience he's aiming for, and while this special is low on horror specifically, he has a real knack of being able to capture that sense of wonderment that films relating to magic do best. With a keen eye on creating a stylized vision and a great utilization of location and cast, while it's probably in the mid-range area of this genre's cinematic output, I'd definitely say that it was a cut above the rest in terms of UK TV movies, especially for ones from the time. From a cine perspective, it's alright. I think if I was being a bit nitpicky, I would probably say it could have maybe done a bit more around its utilisation of special effects. There's a lot of CSO in this film, and for the most part it's literally just people standing or sitting in front of a blue screen while things happen behind them. These are normally locked off shots that just get zoomed in and out of a lot to give the impression of there being more movement than there actually is. I mean, I'm not expecting anything gigantic from a mid-budget TV production, but maybe just a couple of different angles, a few different shot types, just to help break up those locked shots a bit more, and I probably would have been happier with how the thing looks on the whole. As it stands, you can usually tell when some CSO stuff is going to happen because it locks the frame in almost the exact same way every time. The non-CSO stuff is fine. Again, maybe a little bit more camera movement would have been nice in the form of pans and tracking, but for the most part, it's fine. Performance-wise, we have a bit of a mixed bag. I don't like being too harsh on child actors because, well, at the end of the day, they're learning their craft still at this point, but I wasn't massively impressed with Fairuza Balk as Mildred in this. There's just something not quite right with her performance here. Her delivery for the most part is okay, but there's just a few wobbles here and there that didn't quite land right for me. And her physical performance was just a bit too weak. Considering the year previous she played Dorothy in Return to Oz, I can't quite place why her performance wasn't on par here, though I have to assume that there was probably some days during filming where the vibe just wasn't there, which is disappointing, but sometimes this happens in TV. She has gone on to have a fairly successful career appearing in movies like The Craft, The Waterboy and American History X, alongside voice acting roles for the likes of the Grand Theft Auto franchise and Family Guy. Stealing the show almost completely, we have Diana Rigg and Tim Curry as Miss Hardbroom and the Grand Wizard respectively. Curry's only really in this for about 5 to 10 minutes collectively, but he's easily the most memorable part of this production. He's playing things sort of towards the Frankenfurter side of the scale here, and I think that's just what this kind of film needed. Rigg, by contrast, as Hardbroom, has a serious cold streak running through her performance, and again, she's just utterly watchable in almost any scene she appears in. I genuinely love her performance here. Finally, the soundtrack. And you know what? This is pretty delightful, it must be said. It's a bleepy bloopy synth jobby, and it surprisingly suits the tone and visuals of the film perfectly. That camp streak I mentioned earlier comes out in full force with the soundtrack here. And the musical numbers themselves, well, don't even get me started. Tim Curry's musical number here is pretty infamous online as an out-and-out meme by this point anyway, but Charlotte Rae's performance as Agatha in her musical moments have to be seen to be believed, quite frankly. And with contributions to the soundtrack from the likes of Bonnie Langford, I can guarantee you a fun ride from start to finish. The Worst Witch was released on VHS in 1987 by Central Video, and apart from the occasional television repeat which went right up to the early 90s, this thing wouldn't see another physical release until the 2000s, when it somehow managed to resurface on DVD in 2007 by ITV Home Entertainment. It also had a US release at some point, though information on that is quite sketchy, and it's also ludicrously expensive, so I assume that this is long out of print. There aren't any extras on the DVD release, but from what I've seen of it, it looks so much nicer and crisper picture quality wise over its VHS counterpart. I would definitely suggest if you were going to check this film out that you would go down the DVD route. This TV movie unfortunately would end up as a standalone one-off special. However, that's far from the end of the tale for this series. In 1998, ITV would try to bring The Worst Witch back as a TV series, which ran quite successfully between 1998 and 2001, and spawned a spin-off series focusing on Mildred's cousin which ran from 2005 to 2007. The show would then be completely rebooted again in 2017 as part of a collaborative effort between Children's BBC, the Canadian broadcaster Stars, and Netflix. And it's clear to see why, really. With a likeable core cast and a plot that's clearly been shown to work, I'm surprised that more hasn't been said about The Worst Witch. While it may just about be showing its age nearly a full 34 years after its initial broadcast, I really dug this iteration, and I think kids would probably still really like it too. It clearly has an audience demo of young girls, and I'm pretty sure they'd have a hoot with it. Boys, I think it would depend on the personality. But I enjoyed it, and last time I checked I was male, so yeah, your results may vary on that front. All in all, high-level direction, solid cine, eccentric performances and a great story all say to me that this one's a great little warm-up movie to get your kids in the mood for some spooky Halloween shenanigans. Maybe give it a try this year, and I think you might be pleasantly surprised.